Talk about something equally important, and this of course following the recent countrywide implementation of stage 2 load shedding by Eskom. And South Africans must be vigilant, and you have to take precautions to protect yourselves and your property. This according to Old Mutual Insure, and they say that when the lights go out, the criminals actually see ample opportunity. So joining us from our Sea Point studio this morning is Christelle Colman, the executive for High Net Worth Solutions at Old Mutual. Christelle, always great speaking to you. Welcome.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So talking about load shedding, and thankfully Eskom has said we're not going to have any over this festive period, but it's probably something that will be back with us after that. The load shedding schedules, those are made public, which means they open to everybody, including criminals. So do you think that criminals use that information and that opportunity to actually plan for criminal activity?
You know, we live in a country where our criminals are very sophisticated, unfortunately. So they do use all the information available to them to plan, you know, maybe the larger armed robberies and home invasions. And I think the most important thing is just that we as, you know, the people living in this country are very much aware of it and understand that something like load shedding does add to the risk and the exposure. And it's not just because your lights are out. Often alarm systems are affected by continuous load shedding because the backup battery gets triggered all the time. So, you know, it's really important that you're aware of this and that you take some steps to protect yourself against the increased risk.
And speaking of exposure and risk, Christelle, what are the most common risks associated with load shedding? Unfortunately,
the most common risk is fire. So, you know, when the electricity comes back on, often we have these big power surges coming through. And in my experience, I've seen a number of large fires where the homes have actually burned down, where people perhaps have their own generator in home, and there's an automatic switch from the generator back to Eskom power, and that unit can catch a light if the power surge is too intense, and that can cause quite a substantial fire, which is an actual case that I experienced. And then also people are quite negligent sometimes. So in one specific case, a lady was busy blow drying her hair. Electricity went off. She left the home but didn't switch the hairdryer off. And then while she was out, the hairdryer came back on and it caused the fire and the house burned down. So, you know, we just have to be more careful, more vigilant and more aware of the risks associated with load shedding. It's not just not having lights on.
And of course, if we see prolonged periods of power outages and load shedding, it could happen, because I'm just reminded this has happened to me, whereby when those power surges actually come on, you actually lose quite a few of your appliances, and in some instances you lose them a few times over, say, a month or two. So what does the insurance company do in that instance?
Well, you know, typically you would have cover for power surge damage on your insurance policy. But if you keep on having frequent claims because you're not, you know, installing the necessary power surge protection on your plugs, or perhaps you don't switch the electronic equipment off, it's a bad idea to leave your phone on charge when there's load shedding. Just take it off charge, because it can be completely damaged, your laptop, your electronic equipment, when the power does come back on. So yes, you have insurance, but the insurance company is going to say after the first, second, third claim, you're not taking the proper precautions here, and we are precautions, and we're going to either install a higher excess or even cancel your policy altogether. And then of course there are policies out there where there's no power surge cover or very limited, so you might not be able to claim for those items, and then you have to take action against Eskom and try and recover the money from Eskom for the damages. But something that's very important that I want to mention at this time of the year with people going away on holiday, most insurance companies have an alarm warranty on their policies, where they say it's your responsibility to make sure your alarm is in working condition and that your backup batteries are working. Now, if you have continuous load shedding, those backup batteries tend to run down quicker. So before you go to the coast, make sure that you get your alarm company out, that they can test your backup battery, replace it if necessary, and that your alarm will work when there is no electricity in place so that the backup battery will kick in. The same goes for electric fencing as well.
But as you rightly point out, Christelle, you may be away and there may be a few incidents that somehow triggers or leaves your battery affected. What happens then? From an insurance perspective, I'm away. I don't even know that this has happened. So will I be penalized for that?
No, the insurance companies will always be fair and reasonable. In contradiction with people think, it is expected of us to treat our customers fairly. So insurance companies will look at your record of service, and if they see that you've had your battery serviced and then there was a number of triggers and it caused in a failure, then the claim should definitely be covered. My word of warning is, have your alarm system tested before you go away on holiday, and have your backup battery tested and replaced need be, because it's when you're away for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks when this would become more of an evident risk than when you're typically around the house and you would know that your alarm battery isn't working. So that's the time to make sure that everything is in working condition, because that's when you're most exposed. We were talking about load shedding schedules. Criminals can see when the home is unattended, when someone is not at home. It's quite easy when you drive around the streets. Yeah, in Durbanville, where I live, I can see everyone's away on holiday. It's not that difficult. That's the time when your alarm system should be in working condition and kick in when there is an invasion into your property.
Christelle, you also touched on generators. Now, how safe are they?
Well, if you have it installed by a qualified electrical engineer and it's done properly, you should be okay. This example that I used just now was actually a very large claim. It was a 20 million rand fire damage claim in a very upmarket area here in Cape Town. Everything was done properly. There was really nothing that you could pinpoint to say that wasn't done correctly, and yet there was still a fire because of this massive power surge that came through. So we are exposed, and that's why insurance is so incredibly important. You need to make sure that your insurance coverage is in place. If you live in South Africa, you need power surge insurance cover. And you have to pay your insurance premiums. Make sure that you adhere to the requirements of the policy, like your alarm warranty and the conditions associated to that, so that if something does go wrong, that you know that you can fall back on your insurance coverage and you'll be paid out and you can carry on with your life.
So with the threat of a load shedding, would you suggest that people actually go and just review their cover to see, A, whether they have sufficient cover, and B, maybe include whatever is lacking from that particular cover if the need arises?
Without a doubt, not all insurance policies are created equal, unfortunately, and normally if you pay less, you have less cover. So it's very important that you phone up your insurance company or your broker and ask them, do I have this cover in place? And if you don't, shop around. Don't just ask the insurance company that you're with to give you that specific cover, but shop around and find out if you can get more cover for maybe less premium. It's always good to make sure that you test the market and that you make sure that you don't pay too much for maybe not the right level of cover.
Christelle, always a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much. And that is Christelle Colman, who is the executive for High Net Worth Solutions at Old Mutual, and chatting to us there about how to remain safe during load shedding.